New at 10, a request that would clear the way for a community recreational center on Raymond Road has been tabled. There was concern that the project was approved by the planning board without hearing from residents in Ward 5. The Jackson City Council tabled the request for a permit to operate Nostalgic's Skate Center at 540 Raymond Road. Council President Vernon Hartley, who represents Ward 5, wanted the measure tabled, saying his ward does not have representation on the planning board. Owners say they will have to wait a little longer, but their commitment has not changed.